triggering of Article 50 in Parliament, and the second anchor would be the debates in the 1960s over the death penalty. And this would start off the TV show, and what I would understand is try and look at the ways in which politicians were arguing how they should represent at this time. Because when the Article 50 debates were going on, we saw three very specific types of representation happening. We saw some politicians standing up saying 52% of people voted to leave, so we must trigger Article 50, it's the will of the people. We saw some politicians standing up and saying, my constituents voted to leave or remain, I'm a representative of my constituents, and that's why we should leave, but that's why I'm voting to trigger Article 50, or indeed not trigger Article 50. Then we had some politicians, Ken Clarke, who is, I guess, Ken Clarke, but he said, actually, I've been a 50-year-long Europhile, I've been campaigning for the European Union, it would be patently absurd if I voted to trigger Article 50. So you've got three very specific, very different types of representation there that are really important. And I kind of think that actually, when we're thinking about whether we're in a time of political crisis, unexpected political events happening, perhaps politicians are starting to think about representation in a different way, and the public are starting to think about representation in a different way. And so the way that I would kind of try and drill down on this with these anchors of these debates is actually to do sort of basic kind of vox pops and kind of your standard interviews in this just one hour special TV program, but actually also kind of film focus groups, and that's focus groups of the public and focus groups of politicians. And it would be politicians from a representative background. And what we'd ask these politicians is how do they want to represent the public? How do their ideas of representation work? And then we ask the public, what do they expect from politicians? And the idea is to try and understand whether these ideas of representation are reconcilable, whether these ideas of representation are in any way at odds. And I feel like this whole programme would not only be educational, but actually it would deepen our and the public's and politicians' understanding of representation more generally.